This is a short tutorial on how to process snow. What you're seeing here is a fairly well exposed image. I'll go up into the histogram, and show you that it's exposed fairly far to the right and not too much block shadow here, if any. So this is a Fuji X10 shot in RAW. Now, the way to start with snow typically is by applying a curve. You can see I don't have to move very far to get my white point pretty high, and that'll give me rather a bright snow, which looks nice. Now if I want a texture in the snow, I have to throw a fair bit of curve on that, and then I'll just bring the rest back, and you can see that the snow now has gone from bright to slightly less bright, and we can deal with that later. But now we're seeing more texture. Also in the clouds, you see much more gradient here, and you certainly see gradient everywhere here, including texture across the front yard. So you can see kind of where things changed in height and where subtle shadows are thrown. There's more dimensionality to the big blob of snow on the back of my car. So easy enough to get that. Now it's flattened everything out a little bit. There's a few things I can do here to improve this. First of all, let's first get rid of what I think is a fairly cool look. So if I look here, I'm showing 223 up on the, or now 227 up on the blue, right up here, look there. So the blue is 225, the red is 205. So there's a significant shift to blue here. And you can always tell when it looks quite cool. It almost looks a little bluish. Even to my colorblind eyes, it's not very attractive. So to fix that, we're just going to select the neutrals right here. Now define a new gray point. Well, we'll click right there. So now we have gray on the snow here, and everything looks really warm. Perhaps too warm. I don't mind this, but a lot of people probably would think that's a bit too warm. Yet it's gray. I mean, this is pretty accurate. You can see it's slightly warm here, though. It is shifted slightly toward now the red on this side, even though over here it's gray. So we can probably split the difference here and back this off a little. But of course, by doing this, I am now backing off also some of my texture. That's okay, I can reapply that. In fact, I would probably want to bring out even more texture than I already have. So up around 50%, I'd say we've struck a reasonable balance here. Still slightly blue, but I think snow tends to have that. There's a coolness to it, so it probably isn't a bad idea to leave it. So we'll flatten that out. I'm going to apply the curve again because I've darkened it a bit too much. So we'll take it up slightly too bright, and then take it down, and then flatten it out. Now you're seeing a great deal of texture, but also I've now managed to blow out several sections of snow. So, and of course, because I'm raising shadows and such here, you can see weird textures starting to develop. That's not necessarily a big crime or anything, it's just something you have to watch out. These small sensors will have that. So if I dial this in now, I can create quite a bit more texture than was originally there. And now you can see that we can see all the bumps and everything, and that's actually pretty nice. Because I'm presenting this at web size, I don't worry about the little texture there. I could always, dial that out if I wanted to. What if I want the car a little bit brighter? Well, I can just grab that one spot here. This is a drag mechanism that lets me just make the car a little bit brighter. Now you can see that I've improved the texture in the snow considerably, almost too much. Take it down to there, let's say. There we go. That's a pretty good compromise. Flatten that out. And because I've kind of flattened the way the house looks a little, I can always just add local contrast. Click on that. This was flattened, so I just did an undo on the last part of the action. So you can see now everything is really given a lot of pop. All the edges have really been hit with contrast. Again, this is called local contrast. It's not an overall contrast, but it does in fact improve everything, including the snow. I'm flashing it back and forth here so you can get the effect. It might be a touch strong, so we back it off to 0 and then dial in where we like it. I'd say that looks really quite good right there at around 60%. So, one last thing. I want to straighten out the house and get rid of that pole. That just looks awful, so I'm going to bring up PT Lens, which is something everyone should try out. And we'll reset this. That's actually the correct settings, as I did this once before, but I'll show it to you. So we bring up the grid. You can see that the house is leaning. It's leaning because I had the camera pointed slightly upwards. That's called keystoning, and it always happens. So I will dial vertical back a little, just enough to get all the lines. Whoops, there we go. That's pretty close right there. There's actually some rotation in this file, but I'm really not going to screw around too much with it. That's just about perfect. So now I take the scale and just get rid of what I don't want on the edges, and there you go. That's pretty close. You can see up here, this is nearly perfect. Close enough to perfect that I wouldn't be complaining. Now we have a house that is straight up and down, and everything looks good. Hit 800px there, which is just an action that fits the whole image into 800 on either dimension, which is my preferred web presentation. Do an ultra-fine output sharpen. That's too strong. You can see that the trees now, the branches look crispy. A lot of people post images like that. You've got to control the sharpening impulse. I could leave it like this, which is 0 extra sharpening, but I'll put a tiny hint, literally 20% of what I just did. Flatten that. Now the branches are all individually outlined without any halos, so that is perhaps slightly extra sharp, but it is really sharp. And that's good. That's what you want. Here ends the lesson.